Today we're going to break down the latest news stories coming in for Rivian, including Rivian's new hands-free driving, their first quarter of profitability, 2 new awards for the company, and more, so let's get into it. First up today, Motor Trend just released their Best Automotive Tech of the Year awards, and Rivian won 2 awards for their vehicles. For these awards, the publication compared 400 vehicles that they tested within the last year on criteria like innovation, user experience, usefulness, value, and safety. They gave out 10 awards this year in a bunch of different categories, and Rivian earned 2 of the top slots. Winning 2 awards tied them with Tesla for the most number of awards here. Rivian's first award is for their app design. Very few automakers actually really pay attention to their apps or have apps in the first place. So when it comes to a vehicle app, Tesla really has set the standard. But Rivian has also done a really great job with their app over the years. At first it was fairly basic, but delivered a lot of great controls. But just like Tesla does, they're always rolling out new versions of software and new versions of their app. And it's gotten really great at this point, so much so that it won an award from Motor Trend. Their app is extremely useful and easy to navigate, and it has useful widgets that make it easy to access plenty of features like unlocking your car, opening the trunk, and turning on the AC without even needing to unlock your phone. I'm particularly curious to try out the latest version of this app on their Gen 2 vehicles, because I was used to that app on the original R1T. It was great, but I think things have improved a lot since then, and I'd be excited to test it out. A lot of people used to say that they were very behind Tesla in this regard, but many say that they're actually surpassing them now. But we'll have to see. Both make great apps for their vehicles, and some of the best in the industry, if not the best. The second award that Rivian was awarded is for General Excellence, given for their Gear Guard feature. Gear Guard is essentially their version of Sentry Mode, and it's their built-in vehicle camera system that you can record anytime your vehicle is alerted to something out of the ordinary. This feature is increasingly common on a lot of other vehicles, but Rivian's seamless integration really makes that stand out. On top of this, they have their Road Cam, which is a 360-degree dash cam recording that can be accessed at any time, as long as you have a Connect Plus wireless subscription. And the bed camera is a particularly great addition there, because you can see the bed itself if anything were to happen for that truck. They also have a special braided cable that specifically locks into the truck bed and will cue Gear Guard if something tugs on it. On top of that, these features have gotten much more efficient in time. Previously, these used to use about 6 miles of range per day just to operate, but now they use about 2 miles per day, which is a really big improvement. Overall, I think most people would agree that these awards are definitely deserved for Rivian. They have done a great job with software and will continue to do so in the future. I'm particularly curious to see how things go with their R2 vehicles, since those will finally get them into a price point that many more people can afford. But speaking of technology, one area that Rivian has been somewhat lacking behind is self-driving technology. Tesla is obviously in the forefront of self-driving technology, especially in the United States, when it comes to headlines, but also the technology itself. If you've used the latest versions of Tesla's full self-driving system, it's really good. So Rivian is now planning for hands-free self-driving coming in 2025. RJ Scaringe recently talked about this specifically on their 4th quarter earnings call, and he said that hands-free driving is coming in 2025. This will be a feature for the R1T and R1S and should be coming in a number of weeks. This is very similar to systems like GM's Super Cruise and Ford's Blue Cruise. The reason I don't say it's directly similar to full self-driving is because it still is limited to highways, but it's something where you don't have to be nudging the steering wheel. Then what Rivian is hoping to do beyond this is eyes-free self-driving in 2026. Basically, it uses the internal camera to monitor that you are paying attention. But come 2026, they want it to get to the point where on the highway, you can be doing other things while the car drives for you. This is ultimately the dream of full self-driving. And Rivian is planning to launch this system next year. These are pretty big steps that will take a lot of development, but it is worth noting that they are limited to the highway for now. I think most people would agree that at this point, this is essential technology, especially when they're competing with the likes of Tesla who have their full self-driving system. They're going to need this in a very strong form going forward to keep selling their cars. Autonomy is more and more becoming a regular part of what people are starting to expect their cars to do. I think for the next couple years, having great highway assist will still be great for the vast majority of people, but I'm excited to see how Rivian develops things from here and when we may see normal driving on normal streets, handled by their self-driving system, whether it's something that requires your monitoring or not. I know that one particular market for Rivian, especially coming up with the R2, would be Tesla owners that would be willing to switch over to their new vehicle, the R2 series. But I do think they need to have really great self-driving to compete. Otherwise, there will be plenty of people that say that car has great features, but it doesn't have this feature. But at the end of the day, none of this really matters unless a company can actually make a profit with their product. And Rivian was finally able to do that this past quarter, which is a huge deal for them. It means that they are the second company in the United States to actually make profits with their electric vehicles. No other company has done this. None of the companies you're seeing push out electric cars in the US are profitable on them, other than Tesla and Rivian. For Q4, they achieved their first positive gross profit of $170 million on $1.7 billion in revenue, and their net losses were $743 million, which improved from $1.5 billion in Q4 of 2023. They attribute their cost reductions to the second-generation R1 vehicles, engineering optimizations, supply chain improvements, and lower commodity costs. And then, on top of this, they have regulatory credit sales. We usually hear about this as something that Tesla sells and makes profits in, but now Rivian is actually doing it as well. They saw a $260 million increase in Q4 year over year, which helped them boost revenue. For 2025, they're hoping to sell about 46,000 to 51,000 vehicles, and that is due to regulatory changes and challenging demand, and they expect modest gross profit for the entire year. So they're not expecting some major growth with their current lineup of vehicles, but they are expecting to be profitable for the entire year, which will already be a pretty big deal, even if things stay relatively the same on the cusp of their next cars coming out. Most recently from Rivian, we've seen them expanding their commercial delivery vans to be available for any customer who wants it. And then they've introduced the special California Dune edition of their R1T and R1S. Those are definitely expensive, fully featured vehicles, but they're an exciting upgrade for a lot of people who specifically want this car for specific off-roading uses. I'm always excited to hear about an electric car company making a profit with their vehicles, so this is a huge deal for Rivian, and I'm excited to see how the rest of the year plays out. Next up today, Rivian is facing a recall of 17,000 vehicles due to a headlight issue. So far, this is affecting certain 2025 R1Ss and R1Ts. And the issue is that in cold weather, the low beam headlights may fail to illuminate upon the vehicle starting up. Obviously, this is an issue, especially at night. The affected vehicles are those made between April 29th, 2024 and February 3rd of 2025, and this is due to an incorrectly configured part from a supplier. Per usual, affected customers will be notified via mail, and those will be sent out on March 28th. And then the remedy will obviously be for Rivian to replace the headlight control modules free of charge. So far, there have been no reported accidents here, but you can look up more information if you're worried about your particular car. Obviously, when we're seeing such software-controlled vehicles like Rivians and Teslas, we're seeing a lot of recalls that are technically software fixes. A lot of software patches can fix things that are recalls, but the owner only experiences a software update. In this case, though, this is a physical recall that is affecting 17,000 Rivian vehicles. Definitely an unfortunate one to see, especially since service centers are oftentimes far away from many customers, but it's good to see Rivian fixing it. Next up today, back in November of 2024, Rivian officially secured a loan from the U.S. Department of Energy of $6.6 billion to construct a new manufacturing plant in Stanton Springs, North Georgia. This is expected to create about 7,500 jobs and is in particular the factory where they will build the upcoming R2 and R3 SUV models. Those are, of course, going to be their more affordable models, and I think a lot of people in particular are excited about the R3. Some are a little bit worried if this loan may disappear with the new administration, but we'll have to see what happens there. And also in Illinois, Rivian is expanding their existing factory. The factory that currently makes the R1S and R1T is located in Normal, Illinois, and this will expand specifically to accommodate the R2 platform. Construction began on the expansion in November of 2024, and they plan to add 1.14 million square feet to the current plant. Doing this is what will enable them to actually make the R2 and get that out fairly soon, as opposed to waiting for an all-new factory to completely be constructed before they can make a new vehicle. But as always with Rivian, it's interesting to see where their competition really is. There's specifically these adventure vehicles. And yes, there are other cars that deliver similar features. Maybe the biggest competitor to the R1S would be the Kia EV9. But when it comes to the overall functionality of that car and the adventure styling and features that it has, there isn't much competition for Rivian right now. Of course, there are other great electric trucks, but they tend to be a lot bigger as well. The Rivian R1T has a 4.5-foot bed, and it has that gear tunnel, so it has a lot of specific things to it, versus other trucks like the Cybertruck or Ford F-150 tend to have larger beds. At the same time, too, Rivian's vehicles are pretty expensive. The R1T can be leased from about $599 a month, but it goes up from there, and then you can purchase that car at $70,000 or $69,990. That delivers a 270-mile standard range and is dual motor. Of course, that's already a very great car, but it's still $70,000. The R1S can similarly be leased starting at about $600 a month, but that one starts at $75,000 if you go to purchase it, or actually $75,900. And again, that's for a standard range vehicle. I think when you're buying a vehicle this large and buying a standard range pack, it does feel a little odd. Of course, they have to have those options, but I do think a lot of people prefer to upgrade to a larger pack. Especially if you're using it as a truck and planning to tow or anything, having a standard range does make it pretty tough. So one of the biggest competitors coming up for Rivian is actually Scout Motors. And the very interesting thing about this is that Scout is a division of VW, and VW just partnered with Rivian specifically for software. So it seems like these Scout vehicles are particularly going to live in the category of the R1S and R1T, and will actually share a lot of features from Rivian themselves. Rivian's software, as we just talked about, got awards, and it's one of the best vehicle software systems that you can get out there, and they're going to be somewhat at least assisting in bringing that to Scout Motors for their vehicles. Scout plans to have the Traveler SUV, which will start as low as $60,000 before incentives, and they're planning for production to start in 2027. When you look inside, it actually has a lot of very similar details to the Rivian R1S. It has 2 screens, and then when you look at the dimensions, it also is a very similar size to the R1S. Then Scout is planning to produce their Terra truck, which, if you were to compare it to any other electric trucks on the market, really looks most similar to the Rivian R1T. Again, they say they want this to start under $60,000 before incentives, and then that will get a 350-mile range. There's also a range extender option here that uses a gas generator to get it up to 500 miles of range. That's definitely something we'll never see Rivian do, so it's interesting to see it coming from Scout Motors, and we'll see how popular that option is. A lot of people don't like to add complexity to an electric vehicle by making it a hybrid, which in function, that's what this really is, to deliver that 500-mile range. But when doing things like towing or simply wanting longer ranges, people are getting creative these days, and we'll see how that does from Scout. That truck has a 5.5-foot bed compared to the R1T's 4.5 feet, so it's definitely more useful there. But we'll have to see how these cars actually turn out when they get released. Jay Leno recently did a piece on both of these cars, and he got to drive the prototypes, and they're definitely very noisy, but that's because they're actually prototypes, and they're actually letting him drive prototypes 2 years ahead of real production. That's pretty rare at this point, and we've not seen anyone drive the R2 vehicles from Rivian. They've just shown them off in their prototype forms. So Scout is definitely moving quickly here, but at the same time, we're 2 years off from their projected start of production. So it's going to be some time, and Rivian will still hold that adventure market for the near future. I'm very curious to see how things go once these get released though, because at least for Rivian's current 2 available vehicles, I think those might be their biggest competition. But a lot of people are excited for the R2, and we'll see how many customers they can steal from Tesla and other companies when that vehicle comes out, and then what sort of self-driving it actually enables. Are they always going to focus on highway driving, or will they bring some sort of advanced full self-driving system to Rivian vehicles in the future? I hope that they do, and I think they will need to as well. That's all the latest Rivian news for today, so in the meantime, if you want to check out my full review of the Rivian R1T after owning that car for some time, you can check out that video linked up here or in the description below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.